Hey there everyone, that sexy nerd is back again! And I already have some problems with this video. First of all, before I say anything about that, I know I'm doing a different month motif right now, but come on. They started doing the Crimean War here on Extra History? Woo! No, I'm all for it. But I already have problems with this, like World War Zero, the Crimean War. Don't you mean the 7 Years' War was the real World War Zero? Technically, we've had damn. I mean, technically, if you also can count Napoleon, we've had 3 world wars before World War One. Honestly, and it's really weird. But now this is World War Zero. I'm really interested because the Crimean War, yeah, they had a lot of different nations, but it was not as many. I don't think it was even as many as the 7 Years' War. But hey, I'm not an expert in these things. I just really, really love history, and I know what I know about it. So I could be wrong. But yeah, I love the Crimean War. But it's also something I have to admit, I do not have a full understanding of because, it's kind of complicated to understand. I just know Russia gets its ass kicked, so that's always fun. But yeah, it's such an interesting subject, and I'm glad that these people are doing it. Honestly, I think Oversimplified needs to do the Crimean War, but he's already going to do the Second Punic War, Oversimplified already, so. At least I hope so. At least I really, really hope so, because they left it on such a cliffhanger at the end of that video, and I'm really excited for that. But yeah, I'm really excited, so why don't we just get into the videos? And please, smash that like button if you want to see more sexy and nerdy content, and subscribe if you think I deserve it. And let's do this thing, y'all.
Jerusalem, Good Friday, 1846.
Whoa.
Pilgrims and priests thronged the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, eager to pray at the site of Christ's crucifixion. Now, most of the time, Holy Week falls separately on the Catholic and Orthodox religious calendars, but this year they coincide and everyone's here at once. It's packed, and they're shouting. The Orthodox priests arrived first, putting their altar cloth.
What? Oh. How did a war not break out right there? Oh, man. Oh, I know what this is. This is their whole, we own all Slavs, or we're the protectors of all Slavs, or some crap like that. Man, that was so weird.
On the altar. Then the Catholics, furious, try to yank it off and replace it with their own. Both insist they have a document from the Ottoman Sultan supporting their right, and suddenly a monk throws a punch.
Whoa.
Within seconds, the seething crowd are shoving and kicking, smashing each other with crucifixes and candlesticks. Turkish bodyguards hired by wealthy pilgrims lay in with clubs. A priest swings an incense burner like a morning star, and people start drawing pistols. By the time Ottoman troops regain control, 40 people are dead. Welcome to the start of the First Modern War. The Crimean War is perhaps the most poorly named conflict in history.
Yeah.
From its name, you might think that it was fought to settle a dispute over the Crimean Peninsula.
Nope.
It wasn't. Or you might assume that Crimea was the most important front of the war.
No.
But you'd be wrong again. Clashes also occurred along the Danube, in what's now Romania, in the Baltic Sea, and even in the far North Pacific.
Yeah.
And though the land operations in Crimea are the most famous, it was the naval operations that actually won the war. In fact, historians have even proposed, mostly hypothetically mind you, that it be renamed the Baltic War, or the Great Russian War, or even World War Zero. See, the Crimean War...
Bullshit. But yeah, Baltic War. Also, isn't there a war? Wasn't there already a war that was called that? Balkan Wars?
War was fought all across Europe, with Russia facing off against an allied coalition including the UK, France, and the Ottoman Empire. But it was also the first truly modern war, a conflict that began looking like the Napoleonic past, but by its end presaged the industrial slaughter of World War I. It would be the first steam-powered war, the first telegraph war, the first war with photographs and war correspondence, and it would kill at least 500,000 people. And supposedly, it all started over who got to hold a pair of keys.
Really?
Now, deadly brawls at holy sites, like the one in this episode's opening, were not unusual in Ottoman-controlled Palestine. For centuries, pilgrimage sites had flip-flopped between the Catholic and Orthodox churches based on whichever faction obtained a decree from the Sultan. But in 1757, the Ottomans finally had enough and decreed a status quo, in which all 6 Christian churches would receive access to the religious sites and shared responsibility for their upkeep. And to give you an idea of how seriously this is taken, get this. When the status quo was declared, it stated that nothing in a site could be changed without the churches all agreeing to it. And as you can imagine, getting full agreement proved nearly impossible. Hence, things like this happened. The day before the decree, a workman left his ladder at one of the churches, and it's been there ever since, to this day. Things became even more complicated when Catholic France, who mostly had custody of these sites via treaties, turned away from religion during the Revolutionary period, and Eastern Orthodox Christians stepped in to fill the power vacuum. Then when the French returned to Palestine in the 1830s, a series of confrontations over the sites followed. Groups warred over who would get to fix structures, since maintenance legally implied ownership. Things got tense. In 1842, the Orthodox Church erected a wall in the Church of the Nativity, blocking
Because that always works. Right? Right?
Catholic access to the shrine of Jesus' birthplace. 5 years later, they pried up a silver star that French Catholics had put there. But the nastiest conflict was over keys. By tradition, the Orthodox monks kept the keys to the church's front door, with the Catholics possessing a less prestigious key to an interior door. Angry at this slight, the two groups started a brawl in 1852 that killed several Orthodox monks. So in response to these worsening brawls, 2 men intervened in the conflict. Nicholas I, Tsar of Russia, and Napoleon III, recently crowned Emperor of France. But let's start with Nicholas I, who was largely responsible for starting the war. By 1852, Nicholas had been on the throne for 26 years and held sway over the fastest-growing empire in Europe.
Now, for those of you who are confused, this is not the same Tsar Nicholas that was eventually taken out with the Russian Revolution. Just wanted to put it out there just in case nobody knew. But yeah.
Military man, he grew up fascinated by his father's generals, dressed in impeccable uniforms, and slept on a cot. But perhaps Nicholas's most prominent feature was his near-religious belief in restoring the Russian Empire to its former glory. See, Nicholas believed that as the last Orthodox power, Russia was the heir of Byzantium and Rome. And as head of the Russian Orthodox Church, he considered himself the protector of Orthodox Christians worldwide, including in Ottoman territory, where they did indeed experience state-sponsored oppression and at times were massacred. He regularly backed Christian uprisings in Ottoman territory, such as the Greek War of Independence in 1821. This belief went hand in hand with Russia's expansionist policy.
Dylan, you son of a bitch! That's
which
awesome.
had spent nearly a century taking bites out of Ottoman territory. Though often done with the stated goal of protecting Orthodox Christians, these were also about expansion south. Catherine the Great herself started this pattern by capturing the Crimean Peninsula and its warm water port of Sevastopol.
She looks different than what they described her in, or at least the video that I saw in one of those. I didn't watch all of them, but yeah. Why did you make her different? She had gray hair, not white.
Port gave Russia a path to the Mediterranean, provided they passed through Ottoman territory. These lands were not only important for reaching ports, though. Nicholas also feared the increasing liberalism of the West, which he felt would undermine Russia's autocratic policies, and he wanted a strong Russia with buffer zones to keep the West at bay. Yeah, and if this is all sounding a bit familiar, a lot of historians have pointed out the parallels to recent events. In fact, Crimea itself, while internationally recognized as part of Ukraine, has been occupied by Russia since 2014.
It's
Actually,
weird,
though,
right?
now that we're on the subject, as a quick aside, it did feel wrong to do this series without at least mentioning the ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine in today's day and age.
Wow.
One of the saddest aspects of which has been its impact on civilians. And to that end, myself and several of our team have made donations to Doctors Without Borders, who are providing treatment to civilians within Ukraine being affected by the war, ranging from emergency medicine to psychotherapy to medical evacuation. They're also working with communities of displaced Ukrainians currently residing in neighboring countries as well. So if you'd like to chip in and you are able, we'll put a link in the description to where you can help them out with all of that. Sorry for interrupting the history. It just felt important and like it had to be done. But
I'm not even skipping that either because screw Vladimir Putin.
I digress. Russian expansion during the 18th and 19th centuries vastly weakened the Ottoman state. And to Nicholas, there was only one way it would end. During a meeting with British officials in 1844, he referred to the Ottoman Empire as a sick man, a man dying. And when that man died, he said, the powers would have to figure out what action to take. This became known as the Eastern Question. What should Europe do about the seemingly crumbling Ottomans? Nicholas wanted to partition the Ottoman Empire, or, to have Russia take it over entirely. And he saw Britain as a potential ally in this, believing that the British would be happy to see the Ottomans fall, and that after any partition, they would naturally back Russia's claim over the holy sites. I mean, the UK wouldn't side with France, right? Especially not while it's governed by Napoleon Bonaparte's nephew. Though in this line of thinking, he was vastly mistaken.
Yeah.
Turned out, Britain increasingly saw Russia as the danger, not France. Also at the time, Russia and Britain were engaged in sort of a Cold War, known as the Great Game, each trying to influence governments in Central Asia. The British government also harbored fears that Russia planned to move on India, and worried that if the Ottoman Empire collapsed, Russia's dominance of the East would upset the post-war Napoleonic balance of powers. In other words, the British were committed to keeping Turkey around as a check against Russia, and even supported that by pushing the Ottomans into a reform program meant to strengthen the state. But Britain's biggest worry were Russian naval bases in Crimea. Using them, Russia could launch a strike against Istanbul before France or Britain could dispatch a fleet to defend it, effectively collapsing the Ottoman state at will. By contrast, on the other side of this religious issue was Napoleon III, who'd been elected the first president of France in...
This guy was such a joke, man, when he was elected, man. Everybody was, laughing the crap out of him. Because I don't know, kind of like a certain someone. But yeah, it's inexplicable that he became president. And what happened? He screwed everything up.
1848. However, then in 1852, he'd lost the election and instead of conceding, just declared himself emperor. However, his coup was on shaky ground and depended heavily on the support of traditional Catholics. So, in an attempt to mollify this political bloc and bring France back to its international standing, he dispatched a famously confrontational diplomat to the Ottoman court in order to insist that a 1740 treaty granted France the right to govern holy sites. Then when the Ottomans agreed with France, an equally inflammatory Russian ambassador countered with a claim based on treaties they claimed nullified that 1740 treaty. So now the Ottomans, fearing Russia might actually declare war, switched their position and granted them the holy sites. Not ready to back down and to prove a point, France then dispatched the 80-gun warship Charlemagne to sail into the Black Sea, a clear violation of treaties that stated warships could not do this in peacetime. Unable to resist this act of gunboat diplomacy, the Ottomans then switched their position again, renaming France the protector of the holy sites, to which Russia responded with invasion. In July 1853, Russian troops surged across the Danube, occupying the territories of Wallachia and Moldavia, which were jointly governed by Russia and the Ottomans. And at this point, Nicholas considered the war as good as over, certain that Britain and France would not support the Turks against fellow Europeans. He was wrong again. On October 16th, the Ottomans, with the support of Britain and France, declared war on Russia. World War I had begun, and we'll get into all those details next week.
Well, it has begun, people, even though I do disagree with it being World War Zero, because again, if anything, the 7 Years' War has that standing even more so. It was literally also fought in America and frickin' Europe. So, I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments below, because I'm going to have to frickin' wait a week now to watch a 5-part episode that I'm really, really interested in, which sucks. But, hey, what are you going to do? Please, smash that like button if you want to see more sexy and nerdy content, and subscribe if you think I deserve it. And I'll see y'all in the next video.